Josephine live cam as the sun is coming up. Temperature sitting in the mid-40s right now.
I'm back here at the Live Desk this morning with a guest. Oklahoma Senator James Lankford's here to discuss his report on government waste and also talking about Social Security fraud being featured in an upcoming Apple TV Plus series. So, Senator Lankford, thanks for joining us this morning. First up here, country's got a lot of debt here. You do this government waste report. What are you identifying this time around?
So we have $30 trillion in debt, and for whatever reason, it seems like the country, and definitely Washington, D.C., just seems to be able to be moving on with a yawn on this as debt continues to accelerate. So I put out this report every year to remind everyone in Washington, D.C., this is where we are. This is the status of the Social Security Fund, Medicare Fund, of the Highway Trust Fund. And I'll walk through in this edition a question that a lot of people have asked me lately. That's, where does all this money come from? It seems like there seems to be endless spending. And so I try to identify, where is all of our debt actually to? How does this actually occur? And then I identify some of the areas that I see that show that Washington, D.C. is not serious about dealing with debt by some of the crazy spending that's happening.
What are some of the big ones that you're just reading through that you're like, why are we spending on this?
Yeah, so we had, for instance, last year, we spent $2 billion because the White House didn't want to build the border wall that President Trump had put in place that was already contracts for. So instead of actually building the border wall itself, President Biden just spent $2 billion paying contractors not to build the wall because the contract was already out. But there's also cases like state parks up in New England and the earmarks that reappeared last year that have been fighting so hard to get against. We had a swimming pool in Rhode Island that was done with state dollars. Not with state dollars, but with federal dollars. There was a ski jump. That was one of my favorites in New Hampshire, that the federal government built a new ski jump for the state park in New Hampshire. But it's just on and on and on with things that are clearly not national defense. They're clearly not helping our nation to be able to grow economically. This is about something that's for that particular city or state. That's not what federal dollars are for. And when you have $30 trillion in total debt, if you're spending it on ski jumps and on renovating a swimming pool in Rhode Island, you're clearly not serious about taking on the debt.
And we've also got at the same time, issues like this one that you're talking about in this Apple TV series coming up, Mr. Social Security. People might have heard this story, this guy who basically sounds like scammed the Social Security Department out of millions of dollars. What's the whole story there? It's a big story. What is it in brief? And what's your involvement in this series?
I'll give you a brief highlight on it. This is something actually Dr. Tom Coburn started years ago on, and I picked up and was able to finish this out. This is an attorney named Eric Kahn. Of all names for a scam artist, his name really is Kahn. So Mr. Eric Kahn was working with a judge inside Social Security in West Virginia. In that particular location, they were actually getting people on Social Security disability by coming to this lawyer. Then they would go to a certain judge there and they would automatically get on Social Security disability, whether they qualified or not. This built taxpayers and Social Security recipients in particular out of millions and millions of dollars. This was a long-term investigation and a push to actually get prosecution. For whatever reason, the U.S. attorneys in that area chose not to be able to prosecute him. So we literally had to work the entire region in the Department of Justice to get a prosecution and to try to get taxpayers' dollars back again. And Apple TV has then now highlighted that and looked at it to say, this is what's really going on behind the system, something we've been pounding on for a long time.
I want to ask you one more question. We're running short on time here, but this kind of ideological question. Here in the state, the Oklahoma GOP had, at least until the end of this week, he's currently running for Congress as well, said this week that we should try Anthony Fauci and put him in front of a firing squad. The reason I ask you this is because I think there are a lot of Republicans out there I've talked to who are all about fiscal conservatism. They hear the things you're talking about, they agree with it, but they see stuff like this, not just come from some random guy on Facebook, but the party head. And this is becoming more and more of a national discussion. And there are people that are like, I like the fiscal responsibility stuff, but this is extreme and it's going a bit much. What would be your response to those Republicans who are thinking that the party's drifting in a very kind of scary direction in some sense?
Yep. For whatever reason, there are some people that evaluate conservatism based on volume. If you're really loud, if you're really angry, then you're a true conservative. I just don't agree. I don't think anger makes you a conservative. I think policy and ideas and who you are and your beliefs and living those things out, that actually brings what true conservatism is. So again, part of this is the national media and Facebook and everybody else loves the most angry, most vehement arguments on this. So in some ways, everything gets highlighted when you do that. So people do it more because they get media attention on it. The problem is it doesn't help our country get better on this. So I go back to a principle that Paul wrote in Romans chapter 12. I'm not going to try to overcome wickedness with wickedness. I'm going to try to overcome wickedness with good and try to be able to win the day in the argument, because I think that actually helps people long term.
All right, Senator Lankford, thank you very much for joining us this morning.